The old house stood hunched at the edge of town, a skeletal silhouette against the dying light. Weathered wood, bleached almost grey, creaked under the weight of years and neglect. Vines, like grasping claws, snaked their way up the walls, disappearing into the shadows beneath the eaves. Beside the house the creek gurgled and hissed, its voice a low, mournful murmur that sent shivers down my spine. The air hung heavy with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. A solitary crow called out from somewhere in the woods beyond the house, its cry sharp and piercing in the stillness. It was the kind of place that whispered of forgotten things, of secrets buried deep. "You sure about this, Mike?" My voice came out a hushed rasp, barely audible above the creek's insistent murmur. Mike, always the fearless one, just grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't be such a chicken, Chris. It's just an old house. Besides," he lowered his voice conspiratorially, "they say it's haunted." We were 5 friends, young and restless, drawn to the old house like moths to a flickering flame. There was something about its desolation, its air of brooding menace that both repelled and fascinated us. We told ourselves we were just looking for a thrill, a break from the monotony of our small-town lives. But deep down, I think we were all searching for something more, something to test the boundaries of our understanding. The front door groaned open on rusted hinges, releasing a musty odour that smelled of decay and time. Inside, the house was shrouded in an oppressive gloom. Dust motes danced in the thin shafts of light that pierced the grimy windows. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the sound of our own breathing. "Anyone home?" Mike's voice echoed through the empty rooms, loud and jarring in the stillness. No answer, of course, except for the creaking of the house as it settled around us. We moved deeper into the house, our footsteps muffled by the layers of dust that coated the floorboards. The air grew noticeably colder, raising goosebumps on my arms. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The house was a labyrinth of darkened rooms and narrow hallways. Cobwebs thick as gauze clung to every surface. The furniture, draped in dusty sheets, loomed like phantoms in the dim light. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden menace, every creak of the floorboards a whispered warning. In the parlour, we found a fireplace, cold and empty. Above the mantelpiece hung a faded portrait of a woman in a high-necked dress. Her eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to follow our every move. "Creepy," whispered Emily, her hand clutching my arm. I could feel her trembling. As we moved from room to room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. There were times when I thought I saw something move in the shadows at the edge of my vision, a fleeting glimpse of movement that vanished as quickly as it appeared. And then there were the whispers. They were faint at first, barely audible murmurs that seemed to drift from the walls themselves. They seemed to spiral around us, cold and ethereal, like the breath of ghosts. The attic was a cramped, airless space, lit by a single grimy window. Dust lay thick on the floor, undisturbed for years. A musty smell hung in the air, the scent of decay and forgotten things. Old trunks and boxes were piled haphazardly, their contents spilling out onto the floor. As we explored the attic, I felt a growing sense of unease. The air seemed heavier here, charged with a strange energy. The whispers were louder too, more insistent, swirling around us like a malevolent wind. Mike, oblivious to our fear, was rummaging through an old trunk. He pulled out a tarnished silver hand mirror, its surface clouded with age. "Look at this!" He held up the mirror, grinning. "Maybe we can use it to summon Bloody Mary." "Don't!" I hissed, my voice tight with fear, but it was too late. As Mike held the mirror up, a cold wind swept through the attic, whipping the dust into a frenzy. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. A high-pitched keening filled the air, chilling us to the bone. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The wind died down, the dust settled, and an eerie silence descended upon the attic. We stood there for a moment, hearts pounding, our breath catching in our throats. "What was that?" Emily's voice was a terrified whisper. Before anyone could answer, the mirror in Mike's hand began to glow with an unnatural light. The air shimmered and wavered, and a figure began to coalesce in front of us. It was the woman from the portrait downstairs. Her face, pale and gaunt, was twisted into an expression of pure malevolence. Her eyes, burning with an unholy light, fixed on us, and a chill deeper than any I had ever known cut through me. Terror lent us wings. We scrambled back from the apparition, our screams echoing through the empty house. I stumbled over a trunk, falling to the dusty floor, my skin crawling with fear. "Run!" Mike's voice, hoarse with terror, cut through the pandemonium. We didn't need to be told twice. We fled the attic, our footsteps pounding on the wooden stairs. The house seemed to press in on us, the shadows reaching out like grasping claws. I could hear the woman's chilling laughter echoing behind us, urging us on. We burst out of the house and into the night, gasping for breath. The cool night air stung my lungs, but it was the air of freedom. We didn't stop running until we reached the safety of the streetlights, our chests heaving, our faces slick with sweat and fear. As we stood there, catching our breath, I risked a glance back at the house. It loomed in the darkness, silent and menacing. The single window in the attic glowed faintly, as if lit from within. And then, for just a moment, I thought I saw a figure silhouetted in the window, its eyes burning with an infernal light. We never went back to the old house by the creek. The memory of that night, of the chilling laughter and the burning eyes, was seared into our minds. We tried to forget, to move on, but the experience had changed us in ways we couldn't understand. The whispers followed me. They were there in the silence of my room at night, in the rustle of leaves outside my window, in the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. They were a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked at the edge of my world, the unseen forces that whispered to me from the shadows. I never saw the woman in the mirror again, but I could still feel her presence, cold and menacing, hovering at the edge of my awareness. The experience had left an indelible mark on my psyche, a haunting reminder that there are things in this world that we cannot explain, forces that we cannot control. And sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I would hear the creek's mournful murmur, and I would know that the whispers were not just in my head, they were real.